Hi guys. Our homes are special places. In this big world, home is the bit of space that we get to call our own. It's a place that protects us from the elements, gives us privacy, gives us a space to safely rest our heads, and is a place where we can cook meals and nourish our bodies, exercise if we want to, spend time with loved ones, create memories, and it's a place that allows us a respite from the world. It's a place to spend time as we live our lives, and it's also a place where we can store our stuff. In fact, one way of looking at our homes is to take a home and break it down between living space and storage space, because that's essentially what our homes are a mixture of. So it's a place to store our items, and then it's also a place to be able to move around and live. Both living space and storage space are important functions of a home. But it's also good to pause once in a while and make sure that storage space isn't impeding on living space. In this society where there's a lot of mass production and we can be targeted by ads and we're busy, sometimes we can go on autopilot and not even notice if our living space is being impeded on. Have you ever stopped to consider the balance between living space and storage space in your home? In this video, we'll talk about that because it's food for thought and it's also very interesting to think about. Hi, my name is Mika and I own a professional organizing business. I'm also a writer and I'm currently writing a book series on how to have good vibes in your home. I'm currently working on the first book of the series, which is all about decluttering. And as I write, I share my content with you here on this channel. So why I started thinking about making a video on this topic is because I went to go visit my father recently. And whenever I go visit him, I stay in a room that's essentially my room / the guest room, and there's very little furniture in there. Because there's very little furniture and not that much stuff, there's so much living space. Like there's so much room to live. If I want to do yoga up there, there's plenty of room. If I want to throw the ball so that the dog can run, there's plenty of room. So whenever I go stay in this room, I visit for about a week at a time, and I bring my things in there, and I always think about 5 basic elements that contribute to having an optimal feeling in a space and also help us to have a good balance between living space and storage space. So I'm going to share them with you in this video. And that room that I stay in actually reminds me of one of my childhood homes. So to preface a couple of important points that I'll make in this video, I'd like to share the experience of one of my childhood homes with you and take you on a quick trip to Japan. So my mom is Japanese and I'm half Japanese, and so growing up I grew up between the US and Japan. And I want to just take you briefly to this house in Japan because it had a ton of living space. Basically, this house wasn't big or small, but it seemed so big and spacious. And it was because there wasn't much stuff and there wasn't much furniture. So this is also the house that my mom grew up in with her brothers and sisters, and it's been in our family for generations. So it's a traditional Japanese house, and I just kind of wanted to show you what it was like in terms of living space and how much furniture was in there, so I drew it out for you. So just to take you through it, at the very front of the house, it was like a Western style office where my grandpa had his, he did calligraphy and among other things, business related. So he had a desk and bookcases and then a sofa for people to come visit. And that was his office. It was the front area. Then you take your shoes off and you go into the main area of the home. And the first floor basically had a low coffee table, which is where we would eat dinner. It's where we would serve tea if guests came. It's where we would just hang out and watch TV. It serves so many purposes. And it was just a low coffee table with 4 cushions around. Then there was a TV in the corner, a butsudan, which is like an altar. It had pictures of deceased family members. And every night my grandma would put rice and soup and whatever little piece of the meal that we were eating over there to serve to the ancestors. Then we have our kitchen, and then there was a traditional Japanese bathroom with a deep tub. So that's the bottom floor. Now, I just want to take you up to the top floor. So you go up these stairs, and then at the top of the stairs you open these rice paper doors. Now, there's 2 big adjoining rooms. One room was completely empty. It did have a closet along the side, and inside that closet is where we would fold up our beds and put them in every morning and then take them out every evening or every night before we go to sleep. Then the other adjoining room had a small vanity in the corner, an armoire for the clothes, a TV and a TV stand, and then there was a little indented area, and it was just for decoration. There was a scroll and then some flowers. And then there was another big closet with rice paper doors. And I remember the closet being fairly empty, so much so that there was just a massage chair in there. And that closet had windows out to the street, so you could sit in the massage chair and look out at the street. But the reason I bring up this house in Japan, the traditional style house, is because it's just so interesting now. There was just so much living space, and there wasn't that much furniture, yet all my needs were met. I have great memories in that house. I could do my homework unimpeded. We ate, we cooked, we slept, everything, and we just really didn't need much. So even with the lack of stuff that was in there, it felt really homey and it felt really comfortable. The walls were these textured beige walls, and there was this very slight glitter in there. It was very subtle, like it wasn't glittery, there was just some glitter. And I remember when the sun would hit the wall, I would think, how beautiful. Like it would just shimmer. And the floors were tatami floors. Tatami is like the woven traditional flooring, and it keeps you cool in the summer and warm in the winter, and it insulates very well. But because there's so much texture everywhere, I think that's something about traditional Japanese houses, that because there's so much texture and so much natural material, you don't feel the need to bring things in as much. For example, from the tatami floors to the coarse textured walls to the rice paper doors, there's texture everywhere that you look. So it doesn't feel bare or like you need to bring stuff in to offset blank walls or a blank space. I also think that texture in a home in general is really important. I think it puts us at ease to a certain extent, because we humans have always lived in natural dwellings until fairly recently. So I think this is why if you put us in a modern box per se, we have the urge to bring things in to make it more homey and cozy. And I personally think that it has something to do with us being more biologically accustomed to being in dwellings of nature, which nature has texture. For example, when we lived in caves, caves had texture. When we lived in huts and homes made of stone, or homes made of timber before we had drywall, all of those elements that we were surrounded by have texture. And that's why bringing things in that have natural elements and natural touches into a home, I think help offset that need of us bringing more and more in. Like we might decorate to try to make a room feel more cozy and homey. But if we just put in just one or two natural touches or some natural materials, I think that in itself can make a huge difference in the feeling of the home, and then we're not as apt to or feel the urge to bring more and more and more in. So if for some reason you keep decorating and it's filling up your house, try seeing how much texture and natural elements that you have in your space and incorporate just a few things if you don't have very much, and see if that offsets the urge to bring more things in. Texture is something that I don't even think that we know that we want. But I think that we tend to bring more stuff in when there's not enough natural elements in our dwellings. And I think that's because we're trying to engineer the feeling of a comfortable atmosphere as an attempt to offset the lack of texture and nature. And so that's why bringing things in that have natural touches and natural elements into a home could immediately make it feel like organic and cozy. Things like plants or fresh flowers or terracotta or other natural pots to put our plants in, or rocks or linen bedding, or even candles and natural woods. Having enough nature and texture is an element that I think helps to make our spaces more comfortable and soothing, and over time it's a subtle way to offset the desire to bring more stuff into our spaces, especially in terms of decorating. I think it is the antithesis to over-decorating. And now the second element is to mind how much space is taken up by storage and furniture. When a house is built, about 10% is the general rule of thumb that storage is built into the home. So 10% is already built into the home, and then when we move into a home, we usually fill up those storage spaces. Then when those storage spaces are full, we bring in storage receptacles or furniture to store the rest of our stuff. With each new piece, that becomes storage space instead of living space. And when you make a place a storage space, then it's not usable for living anymore. Although there are ways around it, like multifunctional furniture. So with every piece of storage furniture or storage receptacle that we bring in, it does impede on our living space. So if you ever feel like your space is congested or that you have more storage space than you like and not enough living space, definitely consider decluttering or removing a piece of furniture or rearranging your furniture. Or it could even have to do with the furniture itself, where you need to scale it to the room, whether it be bigger or smaller, or controlling the flow of the space between the furniture. Sometimes when I declutter with clients that have more furniture than living space, we declutter enough to get rid of one storage piece of furniture, and it makes all the difference. Just by opening up some more square footage, it can feel really good. But it is a luxury to have the space. And thinking about it in terms of energy and feng shui, there's qi, which is like life force energy, and it's the energy that flows through a room. And so you don't want a room to be congested or to have congestion points, because it does make the room feel different. To have the optimum energy in a room, you want the energy to be able to flow, meandering, and unobstructed. Which leads us to minding the flow of a space and eliminating congestion points. So when we have a congestion point in our bodies, it doesn't just affect that specific part. Everything's intercorrelated, so it kind of slows down your whole body. Like if I have a runny nose, then it's not just going to be solely my nose. Now it's going to affect probably like my ears or my head, or I'm not going to be quite as clear. So I think with a room, it's the same. Like if you have a congestion point in one part of the room, it's going to affect the feeling of the entire room. So you want to make sure that you can open doors all the way, that you have enough room to go around furniture. There's no congestion points where you're having to go sideways or step over something every day to get around somewhere. You want clear access routes and then clear entry and exit routes too. So if you can clear the congestion point and have good flow, it does make a room feel so much better. Also, too much stuff in too small a space can make the energy of a space like stagnant and not feel as good as well. So point number 4 is to declutter and to keep a fairly uncluttered space. So sometimes if we feel like we don't have enough living space, all we need to do is declutter. We humans are gatherers, and we own things and we appreciate things and we like things. And I think they serve us really well. But I think also you have a saturation point. And so you have things that serve you, things that serve you, things that serve you, and you own all these things. And then I think there's a saturation point of like diminishing returns, where after a certain amount of stuff that you own, instead of being of value, it starts to weigh on you. And once you're past that saturation point, people get weighed down, and then they're not as happy or as free as they could be. So it is important to declutter, because clutter could be overwhelming. It can also be an energy stealer. And life is for experiencing, and a lot of experiences take place in our home because that's where our environment, our respite is from the world. It's where we go to rest, and it's where we go to spend time. Whether you're often out or not, the home is where you inadvertently end up spending time. So if you can make it optimal feeling, it can make a big difference in your life. I think having enough living space literally gives us enough room and space to live, and also to be present and to live in the moment. I think that when we have too much stuff in our living spaces, that we end up focused on the past. And when we have too much stuff in our spaces, that we also might be worried about the future too. Without enough living space, we don't have enough room to live optimally now to focus on the moments and therefore build our futures. So if you decide, hey, I think I have too much stuff and I'd like to declutter, I have a lot of decluttering videos on this channel to guide you through it. But for the sake of time, I'll move on to the next point, which is the importance of negative space and Ma. One of the other things that I noticed in that room over and over was that every painting that was hung up in that room, there was so much negative space around it that it was very restful to the eye and really made each painting look so nice. So if you're not familiar with what negative space is, it doesn't sound like a good thing, but it's a great thing. So positive space is, say, where a painting is hanging. And then negative space is the area around it that's basically empty, so that this negative space allows the positive space to be highlighted. You want a certain amount of negative space in your environment because it allows your eye to rest. So if every wall is full of paintings and pictures, then there's nowhere for your eye to rest. And you want negative space. That would mean it's all positive space. However, if you have painting, and then negative space around each painting, it's much more calming and has like a more luxurious feel. There's a Japanese concept for negative space and it's called Ma, and it basically means negative space. And it's also the space that's necessary to be able to breathe or grow. Ma is a concept dedicated to the beauty and appreciation of the space that's in between things. So in this room, I kept noticing, wow, there's just so much negative space, and it looked beautiful and it was calming, and I had a huge appreciation for it. And it just made me think that's one thing that's just so important in homes, is to make sure that we have enough negative space. So if a room ever feels visually cluttered, take a look at how much negative space that you have, and maybe you need to include a little bit more. And just having negative space is so nice. So I just thought those 5 things were very interesting. It's something that I think about every single time that I go and I stay in that house. So this is just food for thought, and it might be worth thinking about. So if you ever feel like you're short on living space, this video might encourage you to take a look at your storage space in order to increase your living space. I hope that you found this video fun and informative and thought-provoking, and I hope that in some way it helps you with your home. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. I'd really appreciate it, as it helps other people find my channel. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please hit the subscribe button. And thank you so much for watching. Take care and see you in the next video.